You've probably heard of Morgana, the sorceress of Arthurian legend. But what if that story is only a distorted fragment of something much older? In Ireland's oldest tales, there was a force they feared long before Arthur, and she wasn't a witch. She was a decision. Welcome back to Legends Reborn. Tonight, we step away from the best-known versions of myth and into the older Irish stories where her name first took shape. In those tales, the Morrigan moves as an omen and a challenger, always close to choice and consequence. She arrives where lives bend, on the edge of battle or at the crossing of a river, in the pause before a fate is sealed. Tonight, we follow her through those moments and listen for what remains when the later legends fall away. In these legends, kings and heroes don't fall by accident. They fall when she turns her eyes toward them. In the stories that circle around her most often, the Morrigan steps into view beside a single man. The hero is Cú Chulainn, famed as the lone defender of Ulster, the warrior who holds off an entire invading army almost by himself. His legend is huge, and at first glance, he seems to stand alone. But in the older tales, his path keeps crossing hers, and every time it does, his future tightens. One story begins on the road, before the battles that will make his name. Cú Chulainn is already moving toward conflict when a young woman appears and blocks his way. She is not described as a monster. She is beautiful, confident, direct. She offers him love, and with it, support in the war that lies ahead. Her words carry the weight of someone who understands battle from within, not as a distant spectacle. He refuses her. Not cautiously, not with regret, but with the bluntness of a young man who believes he has room for nothing but glory. He says he has no time for a woman, no space for a lover on the road to war. He sends her away without asking who she is, or what it might mean that she chose this moment to stand in front of him. Only after she is gone does the story name her. The woman he rejected is the Morrigan, a goddess who moves with war rather than around it, and who already knows how his story will end. The next time she meets him, she does not come as a woman at all. As Cú Chulainn prepares for battle, an eel coils around his legs in the water, trying to drag him off balance. He strikes it and breaks its ribs. Later, a wolf drives cattle toward him in a chaotic surge. He wounds the animal as he fights to stay upright. Then, a hornless heifer charges straight at him, and he lashes out again, breaking its leg. Each time, he treats what he sees as just another threat, another test of his strength. Only when the fighting is over does the pattern show itself. On the road, he meets an old woman milking a cow. Her body carries a strange set of injuries. One side of her ribs is damaged, one eye is clouded, one leg barely holds her weight. The wounds mirror the harm he dealt to the creatures that tried to pull him down. The old woman offers him milk. Exhausted and still locked into the habits of survival, Cú Chulainn drinks. After each cup, he speaks a blessing, and with each blessing, one of her injuries heals. By the time he has finished the third, she stands whole before him. In that moment, she shows herself as the Morrigan and reminds him what he did when he struck her, first as a stranger on the road, then in every form that tried to touch his fate. She does not kill him there. Instead, she tells him that she will be present at his death. The threat is not screamed in anger. It lands like a fact. She will be there when his story reaches its end. He moves on, but that warning hangs over everything that follows. Around her, another image gathers, the washer at the ford. In Irish tradition, seeing a woman by a river or shallow crossing, washing armor or bloodied clothes, is an omen. The garments often belong to someone who is not yet dead, and the washing is a sign that their time is already counted. When Cú Chulainn later sees a woman at the water's edge cleaning what he recognizes as his own gear, the meaning is clear. His path is already set on a course that ends in that vision. His final battle arrives in fragments. He is wounded badly, too badly to stand without help, but he refuses to fall. Rather than die lying in the mud, he lashes himself upright to a standing stone with his own entrails, facing his enemies as if he were still ready to fight. The opposing warriors watch from a distance, unsure. As long as his body remains upright, they cannot trust that a man like Cú Chulainn is truly dead. No one wants to be the first to step close. The scene holds in that uneasy stillness. Then a single crow lands on his shoulder. In that instant, their doubt collapses. They understand that the hero is gone because the Morrigan has come to claim her place. She does not strike him down with a weapon, and she does not need to. Her presence marks the point where possibility ends. From that moment on, his story has only one ending. If the telling stopped there, the Morrigan would already be a fearsome figure, a power tied to death, insulted and answered, circling above one of Ireland's greatest heroes. But the myths carry her further, away from the fate of a single man and into the shape of the whole island. At Samhain, the festival that marks the end of the old year and loosens the border between worlds, she meets another central figure of the Irish pantheon, the Dagda, a god of strength, hospitality, and kingship among the Tuatha De Danann. On the eve of a major war, the Dagda is told to meet a woman at a river in the north. He finds her standing in the water, washing herself, hair hanging loose, a sign of wild power rather than neat respectability. They lie together on the riverbank. In this meeting, she is not a distant omen, but a direct partner. After they sleep together, the Morrigan tells the Dagda where the enemy, the Fomorians, will land. She names the place. She promises that the Tuatha De Danann will win the coming battle, and she does not hide that the price will be heavy. Victory will come, but it will come through blood. Here, her role stretches beyond challenging one man. This is not a private encounter without consequence. Their meeting has weight for the land and for the people who will live under the rule that follows. In the logic of Irish myth, a union like this does more than predict success, it seals it. By joining with the Dagda at Samhain, she throws her authority behind who is allowed to hold power when the year turns. When the wars at Mag Tuired are told, her presence runs through them like a dark current. In the first great battle at Moytura, where the Tuatha De Danann fight the Firbolg, the Morrigan fights alongside other goddesses of war, turning the very air against the opposing side. Blood is said to fall like rain. Mists rise. Confusion grips the enemy. The battlefield feels choked with dread. She does not simply swing a sword. She shapes the conditions under which swords are raised. In the later battle against the Fomorians, her actions become even more pointed. She works with the Dagda and other leaders to weaken the enemy before the final clash. The Fomorian champion Indech falls under her assault. His blood is scattered among his own people, leaving them shaken and broken in spirit, even before the last blows land. When the final confrontation comes, her war cry sends the Fomorians into full retreat, driving them toward the sea in panic. By the time the battles close, the Tuatha De Danann stand as victors. The Morrigan is the one who announces that victory from the heights of Ireland, naming place after place as she blesses the land they now control. She has moved from standing beside one hero to moving over entire armies, and from there to speaking over the island itself. Seen through these episodes, she appears as the dark edge of war, present at the death of champions, present at the turning of great battles, present when power over the land is claimed. But these are only the most dramatic points where she steps into the light. Other tales remember her in quieter ways, and those softer, stranger glimpses begin to change what she looks like when all her roles are taken together. Away from the clash of armies and the deaths of heroes, the Morrigan moves through quieter scenes that still feel uneasy. In those moments, she is not the scream over the battlefield, but the presence at the edge of sight, near the water, in the trees, just outside the place where someone is trying to pretend everything is normal. The figure of the washer at the ford shows this clearly. She stands in the shallows of a river, her clothes heavy with water, hair loose, hands red from working cloth against the current. At first, she could be any woman doing hard work in harsh conditions. Only when someone draws closer do they see what she is holding. It is not ordinary laundry, but pieces of armor and clothing he knows as his own. In his world, they are still clean. In her hands, they are already stained. She does not have to speak. The image alone carries the message. Somewhere beyond his reach, his end has already been decided, and she is preparing for what comes after. In other tellings, she is little more than a crow that refuses to leave its perch. The bird sits on a stone or a branch while riders gather, or while two forces move toward one another across wet ground. Sometimes she speaks, sometimes she is silent, but her presence tightens everything around her. Whoever sees her cannot quite tell whether she has come to warn them, or whether she is simply there because what she foresaw has already begun. This is part of what defines her. The Morrigan does not appear at every battle or at every death. She comes to the moments when a path changes direction and will not turn back. A hero pushing away help that feels strange and unwelcome, and a community feeling its hold on the ground beneath it begin to slip as the year leans into its darker half. She is less the cause of those moments than the pressure that makes them visible. From that angle, calling her a goddess of war is only a partial truth. War is one of the clearest places to see her work, but not the only one. The stories also refuse to keep her in a single body. In some, she is one woman whose form stretches and shifts. In others, she moves alongside figures called Bav, Maka, or Nemain, their names drifting in and out of hers until firm boundaries start to blur. Together they cover the ground between sign and shock and fear. A crow landing when the fight is done, the wild rush that drives warriors forward, the sudden collapse when courage drains away. There is no neat chart that assigns each role to a single name, and the old texts show no urge to draw one. They simply present a cluster of powers circling the same point, the place where human plans stop being the only force in the room. Her name points in the same direction. Some read it as Great Queen, others as Phantom Queen, and both readings fit what she does. She matters enough that kings and gods have to reckon with her, yet she rarely appears where authority is supposed to sit. She is not imagined on a high throne handing out laws. She is seen at a crossing in the river, above a field, or beside a stone darkened by blood. Her power does not depend on crowns or public titles. It rests in the fact that she is present at the moment when such things no longer protect anyone. That presence is closely tied to the land itself. After the battles at Mag Tuired, when the Tuatha De Danann have secured their rule, the Morrigan does more than shout in triumph. She moves across Ireland and speaks the names of rivers, fords, and hills, reciting verses that bind those places into a pattern of story and power. Scenes like this are not decoration. In early Irish thought, naming a place in that way helps fix its place in an order of memory and rule. A figure who can do this is not only a bringer of death, she is bound up with the question of who is allowed to govern and on what terms that claim stands. Her meeting with the Dagda at Samhain belongs to that same pattern. On the surface, it is a union between two mighty beings the night before a war. Beneath it lies an idea that runs through several Celtic tales. The land is not just taken, it must in some way agree. In that reading, the Morrigan's body stands in for more than her own self. It becomes a way of showing the land's voice. When she goes to the Dagda by the river, lies with him, and then promises victory, it feels as if the ground itself has accepted his side. When she turns against those who would invade, the message is just as clear. They may stand on the soil, but they do not truly belong to it. At this point, loose comparisons with other figures are easy to see. In Norse myth, the Valkyries ride above the fighting and choose who will die, and it can be tempting to treat them as direct mirrors. But their work belongs to a different world. The Valkyries are strongly tied to the promise of a hall for chosen warriors after death. The Morrigan looks more to what happens on this side of the grave. Who keeps hold of ground? Who loses it? Who walks away? Who is left lying where they fell? Her attention is fixed as much on fields and strongholds as on individual souls. As Christianity spreads and older layers of belief shift, parts of her seem to break apart and reappear in new shapes. The washer at the ford slowly loses her open link with a named goddess and stays behind as a more anonymous sign of impending death. In some regions, that role slides toward the banshee, whose cry or presence marks a coming loss for a household or a kin group. Elsewhere, stories linger of blackbirds near gallows, or of women seen alone by water, doing something that no one quite understands, but that leaves witnesses uneasy. Names change, explanations change, yet the sense of a warning presence remains. Later literature also carries faint echoes. Names that sound like hers attach themselves to enchantresses in very different cycles, such as Morgan Le Fay in the legends around Arthur. The Morrigan is not simply the original of these later figures, and their traditions grew apart from one another. Still, it is striking that once a culture has given form to a woman bound to fate and the other world, that shape tends to return under new faces. Through all of this, some lines stay firm. The Morrigan does not usually arrive to offer comfort. She is not a calm voice standing outside events, guiding people gently toward better choices. She steps in when something is already moving and pushes it toward the point it cannot retreat from. At times that feels cruel, at times like a harsh kind of honesty. Those who meet her rarely have time to adjust. They realize who she is only when the space for turning back has already closed. Looked at across her many appearances, a broad outline starts to show. She is tied to thresholds, between life and death, between quiet and conflict, between one ruler and the next, between the ending of a year and the start of another. She is drawn to the moments when choices stop being ideas and harden into consequences. Calling her a war goddess catches one part of this, but she is just as present at a lonely river where a single warrior understands his fate, or in a night meeting where two powers seal an agreement neither can now escape. In the end, the Morrigan never settles into one safe form. She is not only a crow, not only a washer, not only a lover at the riverbank, not only a storm over the field. She appears in all these ways, and what binds them is not her shape, but her task. She arrives where the story could still turn, and makes sure it does not. She is the weight that pushes events from almost to already, the moment where a decision stops being a choice and becomes the line that cannot be crossed back. The Morrigan doesn't leave us with clean answers or a single mask we can hold on to. She waits instead at the edges of stories, in the moments where a path can no longer turn back. How you carry her from here is up to you. For some, she may feel like a dark war spirit. For others, a voice of clarity that arrives when pretending is no longer possible. This is Legends Reborn, where the past still breathes. Thank you for staying with me this far. If this story spoke to you and you want to hear more legends told in this way, you're welcome to like the video or subscribe to the channel so you can find your way back for the next one. I'd be interested to hear what caught you. Maybe it was a scene you thought you already knew, or a detail you hadn't seen placed in this light before. If you feel like sharing that in the comments, it helps these figures keep moving as living stories rather than fixed symbols. Until the next story,